origin story of the platform with a new founding myth, talking about how when he was in college, the country had gone to war in Iraq. And with that, saying that he felt we were acting without hearing a lot of important perspectives and claiming those early years shaped his belief that giving everyone a voice empowers the powerless and pushes society to be better over time, which appears to be a very interesting revisionist history version of the creation of Facebook, because if you look into it, he initially made Face Smash, which is a website where you could rate the attractiveness of their female classmates. And he did so by hacking into the so-called Facebook of the different houses at Harvard, with him even writing in a journal published on the site itself at the time. The Kirkland Facebook is open on my computer desktop, and some of these people have pretty horrendous Facebook pics. I almost want to put some of these faces next to pictures of farm animals and have people vote on which is more attractive. But in any case, with that history set aside and a newly connected origin story to take its place, Zuckerberg just kept pushing back. With us then seeing things like in 2020, Zuckerberg claiming that Facebook's commitment to free speech was a reason to not act on inflammatory posts from Trump regarding the Black Lives Matter protest. Though also, notably around the same time, you had activists and human rights groups who used Facebook to document human rights abuses in the Middle East, accusing the company of deleting their accounts. All while, in the United States, Zuckerberg defended Facebook's policies and resisted pressure to act more forcefully against hate speech. Though a big thing, I will say, is that the company still had a hate speech policy at the time, and Zuck claimed that they were proactively removing roughly 90% of it. But then, something changed again. Biden won the election, Trump lost, and hundreds of his supporters invaded the Capitol. And again, Facebook got some of the blame, and we saw them ban Trump indefinitely for the role that he played in inciting the insurrection. With Zuck then soon after telling investors that the company was considering steps to straight up reduce political content across Facebook, which was done shortly after. But of course, that didn't stop fact checkers, researchers, and the media from finding ways that the platform was still being used to spread misinformation and increase political polarization. And come 2024, you had Zuck getting brutalized before the US Senate, then reinventing his image, and last August, he wrote that letter to Congress accusing the Biden administration of pressuring what had by then become Meta into censoring more COVID-19 content than he said he felt comfortable with, as well as then announcing that he wouldn't repeat the contributions he made in 2020 to support nonpartisan electoral infrastructure because the gifts made him appear not neutral. Though notably, that spending was also part of the reason that Trump accused Zuckerberg of plotting against him during the 2020 election, something that also reportedly involved threats to throw him in jail for the rest of his life. But then, despite all that, within weeks of Trump's re-election, Zuckerberg was dining with the then president-elect at Mar-a-Lago. And it was also at this time, according to reporting by the New York Times, that Trump advisor Stephen Miller told Zuckerberg that he had an opportunity to help reform America, but it would be on Trump's terms. With Zuck there reportedly signaling to Miller and his colleagues, including other senior Trump advisors, that he would do nothing to obstruct their agenda. And in fact, according to the Times, Zuck reportedly began preparing to make sweeping changes to Meta to, in the words of the Times, remake Meta for the Trump era. And notably, with that, the Times interviewed more than a dozen current and former Meta employees, as well as executives and advisors to Zuckerberg. And they reportedly described his shift as serving a dual purpose. Right, on one hand, it's about positioning Meta for the current political climate, with Trump and Republican power ascendant. But also, too, and maybe even more notably, people close to him reportedly say that the shift reflects Zuckerberg's personal views of how his company should be run, right? Views that he no longer wanted to keep quiet. With all that, according to the Times, this whole process, it was highly unusual. Because in the past, Meta would modify policies affecting its apps by inviting employees, civic leaders, and others to weigh in. And so with that, the process would generally take months, but this time it was a, quote, 6-week sprint, blindsiding even employees on his policy and integrity team. With then, on January 2nd, Meta appointing Republican Joel Kaplan to lead its global policy team to implement the changes. And then, a few days later, he added 3 new men to the board, with one, of course, being Trump's friend Dana White. And on January 7th, most of Meta's 72,000 employees reportedly learned about the rest of Zuckerberg's plans along with the rest of the world. With Zuck, of course, famously announcing that it was killing its fact-checking program in favor of a community notes system similar to X's. Or with him also revealing that political content would no longer be suppressed, and finally declaring that the company would be loosening restrictions on how people can talk about contentious social issues such as immigration, gender, and sexuality. And notably here, all of that came not just in a written statement from Joel Kaplan, but it was also announced by Zuckerberg in a video that had him say,
"After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms."
Right, and then, in the days after, the full extent of the changes became clear. The company ending its hate speech policy, now calling it hateful conduct, with this policy now allowing posts saying you hate people of certain races, religions, and sexual orientations. And that including permitting, quote, allegations of mental illness or abnormality when based on gender or sexual orientation. With also an Intercept investigation claiming examples of other newly permissible speech highlighted in Meta training materials, including immigrants are grubby, filthy pieces of shit, and gays are freaks. With this seeing Jillian York, director for international freedom of expression at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and notably, someone who has criticized Meta for what she described as over-moderation in the past, saying, "These examples demonstrate that Meta's policy changes are political in nature and not intended to simply allow more freedom of expression." And then beyond that, we've seen things like the company also reportedly removing the transgender and non-binary themes on Messenger. Instagram at one point blocked LGBTQ hashtags and marked them as sexually suggestive content, though Meta said afterwards that it was a mistake. And then off the platform, facilities managers were reportedly instructed to remove tampons from men's bathroom at Meta's offices in Silicon Valley, Texas, and New York. And of course, the company also announcing that it would be ending its work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, with reportedly a memo being sent to staff referring to the fact that, quote, "the legal and policy landscape surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in the United States is changing." And, since then, Zuck's kind of just been handing Trump more wins. Where you have Meta paying $25 million to settle a Trump lawsuit dating back to his ban from Facebook. Zuck's been praising the Trump administration openly, and now he's reportedly hunting for a home in DC to be closer to Trump. Though, I will say notably, right, Trump and his team, not fully buying it maybe. Because according to Rolling Stone, various members of his inner circle are skeptical of Zuck's MAGA makeover, with one senior Trump administration official even reportedly telling the outlet there is a lot more ass-kissing that needs to be done, saying he just needs to prove himself. It's a good start, but he can't just snap his finger and make the past not happen. So, with all that, I'd love to know your thoughts on the situation in general, but also with Zuckerberg and what we've seen with a number of multi-millionaires or billionaires, do you think this is kind of the evolution, the final form? They finally feel free to be this version of themselves? Or do you see this more as them being shapeshifters? We're going whichever way the wind blows for better financial or personal gain. What do you think and why? And then I've got more important news for you in just a moment, but quick question. Can you list every subscription that you are currently paying for? You can pause if you want to try, but how'd you do, right? For me, I cannot keep track. Or rather, I couldn't keep track until I found today's sponsor, Rocket Money, which uncovered subscriptions I didn't even remember signing up for. This app, it's like having a financial detective tracking down every single sneaky subscription, bleeding your bank account dry. And if you don't know, Rocket Money, it's a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. And Rocket Money's dashboard, it gives you a clear view of your expenses across all of your accounts. You can even create custom budgets, track spending trends, and get price alerts. And their goals feature, it can help you save for things like paying off credit cards or building savings. Hell, Rocket Money, it'll even try to negotiate lower bills for you. They'll automatically scan your bills to identify savings opportunities, and then you can ask them to negotiate for you. So they're dealing with customer service, not you. And this is Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Just go to rocketmoney.com/PDS today. That's rocketmoney.com/PDS, rocketmoney.com/PDS. If I were to ask you over the course of a year, how many Americans engage in some form of gambling, what do you think that number would be? Think about it, ponder it, give me that answer. The answer is 55%. Right, that is according to a survey conducted last summer for the American Gaming Association. With that, up from 49% the year prior. So, we're talking about tremendous sums of money, like some $150 billion on sports alone last year, according to estimates. With us even seeing 538 founder, author, and famed data nerd Nate Silver estimating in his new book that the total wagers placed by Americans every year passes $1 trillion. Which, if true, would mean that in 2022, Americans bet the equivalent of nearly 4% of their nation's GDP and lost over 10% of that money. Which, really shouldn't be that shocking, since today we bet on just about everything. Sports, political elections, stock prices, meme coins, online lotteries, casino apps, Luigi Mangioni's play, the existence of aliens. Hell, places like Polymarket, they even let people bet on different aspects of the Los Angeles wildfires, like how fast they'd spread and when they'd be contained. Though to be clear there, that's technically only supposed to be available to bettors outside of the United States. But clearly, the most prominent driver of the new gambling culture in recent years has been sports. Right, and that because ever since the Supreme Court struck down a federal ban on sports betting in 2018, nearly 40 states and DC have legalized the practice. Though notably, the two most populous states in the country, California and Texas, have yet to join them. Right, and so if those two joined, you'd expect the gambling numbers to get even more insane. And you better believe that industry executives' mouths, they are watering at the idea. Because companies like DraftKings, FanDuel, Caesars, MGM, and Disney through ESPN, they've raked in the profits from this gambling boom. Even the big sports leagues who have historically opposed betting now caving in as they're signing partnerships with sportsbooks. And we've seen a whole cottage industry sprout around these markets with one very controversial goal, which is the reason that we're talking about this today. Using the revolution in artificial intelligence to turbocharge the gambling boom. Right, and they're doing this in a number of ways. So we're going to start with the mildly concerning and end with the downright dystopian. Right, so first step, you got things like companies using AI to streamline many of the creative tasks that the gambling industry already does, namely writing persuasive of marketing copy. With Narrativa, for instance, a firm that reportedly gets a quarter of its business from gambling clients, churning out everything from automated summaries of sports games to SEO-friendly reviews of online casino games to promotional social media posts. But then you've also got firms like SharpLink that use AI and